Welcome to the 42nd Mill Valley Film Festival. We are so delighted to have you here tonight for the West Coast premiere of The Report, directed by Scott Z. Burns. It not only directed, but written and produced as well. But I would be remiss if I didn't thank our sponsors. As you know, we are a not-for-profit, and we require at least 50% of our revenue from sponsors, individuals, and foundations, and government support. So I'd like to thank two very special groups that have supported us for years, Wareham Development and the Nancy P. and Richard K. Robbins Family Foundation. Thank you, Rich and Nancy. And the Marin Community Foundation, as you know very well. Scott has been a force in the film industry. As I mentioned, he's a writer, he's a producer, he's a director. He's not only made some of the most entertaining and popular films of the last decade and a half, but some of the most important films as well. And certainly one of them is The Inconvenient Truth as producer. We're talking about films that he's written, The Bourne Ultimatum, Side Effects. He's worked a lot with Steven Soderbergh. I think you've heard of him as well. And he's just an amazingly talented director. I want to take the liberty of just mentioning one quote, because I think it's so appropriate. It actually came up the other night in a conversation, but I had the great pleasure of seeing The Report at the Sundance Film Festival. It stayed with me the whole year. I want to thank Amazon Studios for allowing us to show it. We talked all year, and at one point I thought, oh my God, are we not going to be able to show it? I hope we can show it, and we are showing it. But this quote stayed in my mind. There's nothing new in the world except the history you do not know. And thank God for filmmakers and people who make us aware of that. Please welcome Scott Z. Burns.
Thank you. I guess one of the rules that there should be in film is if I'm going to use 2 hours of your time telling you a story, I probably shouldn't take more than 2 minutes right now to tell you about that. But first of all, I want to say thank you all for coming, and I want to say a really big thanks to the Mill Valley Film Festival for having us. I have a lot of deep ties to this area. Family and work history, so it's a real pleasure to be here on my way to Muir Woods. So I also want to thank Amazon for allowing us to bring the film here, and we'll be back after the movie, and I'll have a really special guest for a Q&A. So I hope if you can, you'll stick around, and that's about it.
Hey, hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Charlie Dickey. I am the music programmer and thus a natural selection to be hosting this Q&A for Scott Z. Burns, The Report. We have writer, director, producer Scott Z. Burns with us. And I believe we are not alone here.
Thank you. Is it okay with you guys if I do something I've never done before? It's kind of weird, but I really want to take a photo. This place is very special to me. And would it be okay if I took a picture of all of you? All right, I'll be louder. I'm going to take your picture now. All right, you all look really great. Someone in like the 20, no, never mind. Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. That's 1,000 words, about 3 pages, so just 6,697 left to go. We're going to recreate it.
Before we start, there's someone here tonight who I'd like to bring up to join me. Can you join me in welcoming former United States Senate staffer Daniel Jones?
We don't do a lot of horror at the Mill Valley Film Festival, but this was Mike. It's certainly an intense experience. It's probably the most Kafkaesque docudrama that one could imagine about that era, and the production of this very important and available online report. Can you speak to just the personal experience with the combination of the inertia and opacity that you would experience after every shocking glimpse into a very real component of a new vision of the reality of that present day, which has now become our real history?
Sure, the process of it. First of all, thank you all for being here tonight. It's really special to be in this space. First of all, it's important to highlight that I was just a staffer. It was the senators who made something like this happen. But in terms of the process and going through this began with an investigation into CIA's destruction of tapes, which happened in 2005 but came to light in 2007. We spent 2 years going through records of what would have been on those tapes. The staff were shocked. The senators were shocked. Basically, everything we thought we knew about this program turned out to be the opposite. And the senators then voted 14-1 to launch this much larger investigation, which eventually resulted in the near 7,000-page report. And you keep your head down and you keep going on something like this because you keep uncovering facts that need to be documented as part of our history. And as Scott wrote in the film, which is true, once the Department of Justice dropped out of investigating the CIA, it was only the senators left. And they had to tell this story, and which is why it was so important to work so hard to get this out in December of 2014. And thank you for mentioning that the report is available online to read.
Yeah, I did a little bit of research. I tried. There is a really powerful moment in the...
So did Dan. He did a little bit of research.
Powerful quote in the film where there's an exasperated understanding, and he says, the entire story is gone. And it's a moment that almost feels like a defeat. And this question is actually for Scott, because you've restored the notion of a story that can be, digested in, 2 hours 10, 2 hours 8?
An hour 59?
Hour 59, nice. That's slim. And just the process of taking this near 7,000 page document and its production. So you got both. And creating one digestible and entertaining and troubling film from it.
First of all, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I made a deal with Steven Soderbergh that I would not make a movie more than 2 hours long, because otherwise I knew he would walk out. So thank you all for staying. I guess we certainly live in a time of narratives, and it's a time where, regardless of the crazy shit you believe, you can go online and find support for your prepackaged narrative, and I'm very uncomfortable with that, because I guess I want to still live in a world where there are facts. And so when people tell me this is a post-truth world, I have really no interest in being here. Not here, I'm actually thrilled to be here. But I think you know what I mean. So for me, what was really incredible about Dan's story is it's the story of somebody who worked within the system, and I guess I grew up believing that this is a really beautiful system, and that we as Americans should try and stand for something, as naive as that may sound right now. So I was incredibly moved by what he did, and I wanted to provide a fact-based narrative about a story that to me is a slow-moving disaster that took our country a very long time to wake up to.
Before I open it up to the audience for a few questions, I just wanted, before I open it up to the audience who's eagerly listening to my whispers here, just wanted to point out that yes, this slow-burning disaster, which seems to be a recurring format of secrecy, kind of a self-sustaining anti-logic of the maintenance of these unworkable violences against bodies, and then the very slow and methodical and second brutality of uncovering it also results in discipline and punishment. And so I noticed there were a few mentions of the drone program and its back and forth on its efficacy and its and the civilian casualties that also resulted from it. But that's neither here nor there. But do you see the potential? I've lost my train on this. Sorry, but do you see it as a recurring format of certainly an American horror story?
Well, we could go back a long way, finding the mistakes and what Annette says in the movie about, one of the reasons history repeats itself is that we don't seem to listen very well the first time. The reason why I included the drone program in the movie is because I think for President Obama, that program was important because my understanding is that it allowed us to decrease the number of people on the ground while still continuing that war effort. And so I guess what I was trying to suggest is that there may have been some sort of analysis that was done that said pursuing the CIA aggressively about past crimes may have somehow eroded, his relationship with them while perpetrating the drone program. That's my analysis, not Dan's, and so he's not responsible for that. That's an observation, and he isn't the only person I spoke to. That's sort of a conversation I had with Jane Mayer, who wrote a great book about this called The Dark Side, and Jim Risen, who at the time was writing for the New York Times, and a number of other reporters.
Who else did you speak to? And I will not accept, I do not recall as an answer.
I'm here to name names.
Any senators you want to dish on?
Sure. Well, first of all, the main person I want to dish on, and I think it's an important thing, is it wasn't that long ago that we lived in a world where we could come up with something called the McCain-Feinstein Amendment. And so the first person I think to recognize is Senator McCain, and Dan will tell you just how critical he was. And even though I disagreed with an incredible amount of things with that man, what he did here is brave and astonishing and poignant. And when I saw that speech, I knew what the end of this movie was, and I just had to figure out the other 120 pages. So I'm grateful to him for giving me an ending. So he's the first person. Senator Udall is a real hero here. He really was sincere in his offer to read the report out loud on the Senate floor, which would have been remarkable because the document was being suppressed. But I also spoke to Senator Whitehouse, who said to me, I'm really glad you're doing a movie about Dan Jones because he is an American hero. But beyond that, the only other, and I'm happy if you want to hear more about the people I spoke to, but I spoke to a lot of people in the military, and one of the things as a good California liberal that I will tell you, if you're sitting there wondering if you can feel patriotic or not, is the military was the most vociferous about the cost of this program. Because if you have people in your family who are in the military, or you yourself have served in the military, if you were in service and you were captured, you would pull out a card in your wallet that has the Geneva Convention on it. And in my conversations with those people, they can't do that anymore. And they won't be able to do that for a very long time. And we traded away that moral high ground for zero intel.
Let's open it up to the audience for questions. Yes, ma'am, here on the left, glasses.
Yeah, I was curious about your decision as to which characters would be played by actors and which you would use archival footage like McCain or Obama.
Not after that speech. Oh, the question was, you know, she was asking about our decision to not cast someone to play John McCain and what the process was to decide what would be archival footage and what would be actors. And I was so compelled by that speech. And what I was hoping as a storyteller was by allowing, you know, Senator McCain to make that speech in his own words, that it would somehow bring us all back to the reality of what happened. And so I knew that I wasn't going to cast somebody, even though Dan repeatedly said to me in the movie, he was involved the whole time. And he was. And so I do not mean to diminish his participation. I never really wanted to cast, you know, Barack Obama because he wasn't involved in Dan's investigation per se. You know, the real point of contact for Dan in the Senate was, you know, Dennis McDonough. And if I was Dennis McDonough, I'd be really happy that John Hamm played me. I wish John Hamm was playing me right now.
We have time for one more really great question. Who's got a great one? Ma'am, yeah, you do.
What are you doing now, Dan?
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. The question is, what am I doing now? I run a nonprofit organization called Advanced Democracy, and we do public interest investigations around the world. We look at government corruption, election security, and those types of issues. But thank you for asking.
If you have other questions, we'll hang in the lobby for a few minutes, but I think they need the theater for another film.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you all for coming out. OAC's open till 11. That's the outdoor art club just across the street. If you have Snoop Dogg tickets, I'm jealous.
Me too.